I will record it now, and hopefully we can post it later. So that's awesome. So I didn't realize you could do that. Well, we'll give everyone like 2 more minutes to hop in, and then we'll take it away. What's everybody been up to? Any quarantine things people have started at all?
Sick of taking moon pictures.
Yes.
God.
Yeah.
Something to get the camera out, but
Yeah.
Just shooting landscapes of campus now.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I've pulled my camera out in a couple of weeks, so.
Yeah, for sure. It's been slow.
Netflix.
I've been trying to strengthen my arms so that I can hold heavier gear.
I did the lighted blue last night. We didn't really light up the whole building, but they have blue sign outside SAP Center. So did some of that. Seen some other guys take photos of that as well.
There were some cool blue shots last night.
Yeah, we did some of those last night too in Anaheim.
Nice. Anybody watch anything good? I started Duck the other day.
I've been watching The Office for the first time.
Did someone say Office for the first time?
Yep.
I didn't know that was possible.
I'm so jealous.
That's
I
impressive.
enjoy it so far.
It'll get better. 2 and 3, those are the prime seasons.
Yes.
Yeah, I watched Tiger King, but living in Florida, just walk down the street and pretty much live it. So
it's every day for y'all.
yeah, it pretty much is. No offense to my fellow Floridians, but
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to, I don't even know what this, 5 or 6 round of this, which is awesome. And it's fun to see some new faces. So welcome to those of you that haven't come on before. This was kind of an idea out of FaceTime and 2 friends, and then it grew to 3. And we're like, why don't we try to host a Zoom? So it's grown and been pretty sweet. So last week we started earlier this week, we started presentations for the first time and just kind of having some people on to share ideas and ask questions and kind of crowdsource. So last week we had Cooper present, which was awesome, and shared some documentary sports work and some action stuff with NFL and UFC and endless stuff. So it was a lot of fun and really enjoyable time. And this round we're doing based on different things. So this one will be like a team photographer one. So I got Craig Bisacre and then Brandon Magnus which will be awesome, and really excited to have both of them share the team side, one in college and one at a pro. Brandon was previously with UFC and did that. So a lot of variety and kind of mix it up. So next time I don't know what we're doing next Monday or Tuesday yet, but we'll kind of base it off that. If you all have anybody you'd like to see or ideas, shoot me a message. And I'm always willing to reach out and ask if they want to join and whatnot. So if you haven't joined before, there's a Slack down below that if you'd like to join, we're sharing ideas, asking questions, and keeping people up to date on stuff and just hanging out. So there's that. I also encourage you to change your name on here to your Instagram handle so we can add each other. Other than that, and then the portfolio reviews. If anybody's interested in having their portfolio reviewed, or if you're a pro or whatnot, you want to review some portfolios, I can connect you with a student. So I have like 4 or 5 people that have texted about connecting with portfolios. I have a couple people willing to look at portfolios. So let me know, and I'd love to connect. And of course, you all can do that. Some of that are your own, but if you're want me to arrange that, I'm happy to do that. So without further ado, I'm going to start with Craig today. So he's the photographer at Texas A&M, previously at Indiana, and previously before that at Tennessee. Just a great photographer and one of my good friends. And other than that, I'll let him take it away. I'll pop up your site, and you just kind of you tell me where to go, and I'll kind of just run through it if that's cool.
Cool. That's great. I appreciate everyone getting on. I think I lost the coin flip going first with Brandon, so I'll take it. I appreciate everyone jumping on here. It's a weird time for everyone, not just photographers. So it's one of those times that you can kind of all get together and really appreciate it. So it's awesome to get familiar faces and some not so familiar faces. So other college photographers are on here too, and I see a couple, so they might be able to chime in on some of the things and questions that I might get that I'm not familiar with. But as Michael said, I actually started in politics. I lived in DC, went to a school at George Mason University, not a football school, and at the time, not a basketball school. They had gone to the Final Four with Larinaga, but Larinaga had left. So unfortunately, the 4 years that I went there, they actually never made the NCAA tournament. And after the 4 years, the coach got fired. So a weird time, but I did an internship with Washington Times and some freelance gigs here and there, and really enjoyed it. And I actually did an internship on Capitol Hill twice, one on the political side and then one on the newspaper side, and both were awesome experiences. But my drawing was photography, and it was always sports. And so I got fortunate to see a post on Facebook, actually, on a group by a great photographer, one of my mentors, Donald Page, who's now with the Tennessee Titans. He was at Tennessee, and he was looking for photographers, and he was looking for an assistant. And I kind of was like, crap, I just graduated college. What am I going to do? And I had a job lined up with a university for the communication side of things, but it wasn't athletics. And so I was like, why don't I just see what I can do? And so I applied for it, and moved to Tennessee, in Knoxville, Tennessee. And it was my first big college experience, SEC. It was awesome. Learned a lot, and Donald was an awesome mentor for the 2 years that I was there. And then I got asked and saw an opening at Indiana, and after a lot of time, I took it, and it was a great experience. They had just had a photographer leave them after 9 years, and so it was something that I could jump into and make it my own. I was fortunate to have the backing and support of some great admins there, and that really pushed our photography beyond what they were originally doing. And I worked for the Mark Cuban Center, so was fortunate to have a good amount of assets and student workers. They were huge believers on student workers, and so I had a great time there. And then a good friend at Texas A&M reached out, and my girlfriend, who is from Tennessee, is an SEC girl. She was like, "Hey, you can't pass up this opportunity." And it was one of those chances to get back into the SEC. And I know a couple of SEC photographers around here, Andrew and Chris Parent, Andrew Ferguson and Chris Parent. And those guys, that's a unique bunch. And really, like, you know what, I want to get back and be working with those guys. And back to a school that never had a full-time staff photographer. They had amazing freelancers, and so it was something that kind of never knew what they were going for, didn't really know what to expect. I got here, I think, 2 weeks before football season kicked off. Had no gear. It was a mess, but was able to piece it together. Got through the whole football season with loaner gear. Pieced together students' gear, and we came out on the other end and was able to build a team of student workers that are awesome, and we're here now. I didn't even get to finish the whole first season, so I'm looking forward to getting to baseball, because Texas A&M with baseball is pretty epic. The first game was bubbles all around, and if you don't know their bubbles, just look it up. It's insane. But it's sad the season ended how it did. But we were actually at the SEC tournament. Actually, a lot of the SEC photographers there and other photographers around the country were there at their respective tournaments. And we had just done shooting around, and we were walking by Bridgestone Arena, and they had changed the announcement. and I forget what song they were playing in the arena. Someone might know, but So Long Goodbye. And it was weird. And then we were the last team to get out of Nashville, I think, right after LSU, and got back home and have been in my house since. College Station was a little bit affected differently. They were a little bit later than everyone else, but we were on spring break, and so they didn't have classes come back, and students hadn't come back. And my boss and our athletic directors were like, "Hey, stay home." And so yesterday was the first time I had pulled out a camera in like 3 weeks. It was surreal. I actually had to like fix a couple of settings that I had set up. I was like, "Oh, where the heck is this?" But it was good to get back to it. Shooting, I don't know what the outcome or what the long-term look is. So it's a lot of archive work, a lot of connecting with other photographers, and so it's a good time, and I'm glad to be on here. I don't know, does Brandon want to go, or does we want to do some questions, or how do you want to do this, Michael?
Yeah, it's up to you. Do you want to bounce through some of this and talk about kind of what you do for your role and what they're looking for? It's up to you. Or if people have questions, go ahead and ask. It's up to kind of.
Yeah. So I'm the staff photographer for 18 Division I sports. Some can say that there's less or more depending on how you want to count track and field and all those. And swimming and diving, but they all have coaches and they all have personalities and they're all different. So I like to say that we have 18 D1 sports, and it's a fun job. I work for communications, so I have SIDs as my coworkers, and that might be changing a little bit here and there. We might be creating a creative department, which I'm excited for. I actually enjoy working with SIDs. I think that there are our clients within the college level. They're the ones that are getting the images and using them along with our creative staff, our social media and video and graphic designers. We handle, so I have 6 interns now, I guess. And one senior, which it's really sad to see him leave us, and he was just getting really settled in and really making some really great work, and he was actually out with track and field, so it's unfortunate for him to have his graduation in, but so I've got a couple juniors and one sophomore. So I think the staff is really excited for next year for the season to hopefully kick off on time. And then we do all action portraits, varsity club, random requests from anyone and everyone. So we're still trying to figure out things here and there. But it's an exciting time for Texas A&M, that's for sure. And I think every place that I've been has been unique. Tennessee was awesome because I had a great mentor, Donald Page, and he had built up Vol Photos to something special. And I was able to come in there and be an assistant and really work on who I was and what I was trying to do. And he was a great mentor for that. And then to start off and go somewhere like Indiana where basketball was big, but hadn't really had a great time turning around. So it was fun to go there and then leave there and start something completely new at a school that had never had anything. So experienced a little bit of everything when it comes to the college level starting over. So yeah, and any questions? I hate rambling, and I've been rambling, so. I just got one from Nick. Any advice about to graduate? So that's a great question, Nick. And for us, for the college level, if you've been shooting college, so if you've been with a staff photographer at a university, going to another university might be similar and everything, and it might be one of those things where if the job's there and it's a great fit, go for it. But at the same time, like if I were to take on one of Chris Parent's students, I don't know if they would really learn anything because he's so talented in teaching. So it's really tough in that sense for college level. But there is the opportunities out there, and that's what I'm trying to go for. Is that there is the opportunities in the college level to go and be an assistant at colleges. It's tougher to find, especially with everything going on. We were in the midst of actually creating an assistant position. And with everything, how it all turned out, how the season ended, we're going to probably put it on and see what budget-wise and all that kind of plays out. So the jobs are tough right now. And I've always been a proponent of going outside of just the school that I'm at. I want to bring in the best talent that I could possibly bring in. I was fortunate to have Ben Green come in and work for me last year at the end, or right at the right as I was leaving, unfortunately. So I didn't get to work with him too long, but he turned out pretty well. He went to Kansas City and got a championship. So proud of that for him. And but I've always had some really talented student photographers come in and work with us and at the places I've been at, and they've gone on to do really exciting things. So there is opportunities out there. I would say keep your portfolio up, especially during this time. I went back last night and worked on my portfolio once Michael messaged me. It's the first time I went back and worked on my portfolio since getting a new job. So there's nothing of Texas A&M, and there's still not a lot of Texas A&M in there. And my girlfriend goes, "Are you applying for jobs?" Because that's really what she thought I was doing, because that's the only time I update my portfolios. But it's a time that I can go back and look at archive work and get some new stuff in there, find some stuff. I found some stuff that I was like, oh, wow, I shot that, or I can't remember shooting that. And then I was like, oh, yeah, I should get that. So that's one of those things. And look for those opportunities. So go try to make stories. I think that Michael and I were talking yesterday about how this quarantine has made me realize that I want to go do more of this or that, or I need to go shoot more of this, especially for myself. Like we've had so many requests for sports medicine and psychiatry photos, and I'm like, I don't have any. I was like, I don't have any from this year. And I was like, where are those? So now it's on my list when we get back into the season to go do. Looking at facility shots and being like, man, we only shot that facility twice. Maybe we can get some more stuff of that, because we're getting requests and people want the content right now. And we were not really providing more of a variety every single week, and we don't know how long this is going to last. So I would say keep up with your portfolio, keep on updating it and going back and looking at stuff, and then apply. It can't hurt to apply. And reach out to the photographer that or who it is that's maybe making the hiring and be like, hey, I just applied. Here's a link to my thing. Because sometimes when we're looking through stuff, it kind of gets lost. I always have to make a spreadsheet, and it's columns and columns of people. And some are really talented and some are not there yet, but they're getting there. So it just depends on what you're looking for as the staff photographer hiring someone. So I would say don't ever hesitate to apply, even if you think that might not be there yet. That's what the photographer is looking for. I think seeing stuff, and especially maybe if you don't have I didn't shoot pros, or I haven't shot this and that. But I honestly, if I see a kid that shot high school level and he's got his settings pretty decent, or he's trying to experiment with light that's really in a tough environment, I give him more props, because it's harder to get those great shots from those events, because the lighting's not great. Sometimes the access isn't great, or it's really good and you get behind the scenes and you find those coaches at high school levels that are really, really great. And so going there and not being afraid to apply and reach out to people and professionals. I think Michael has this idea of these talks are awesome because you're able to communicate with some of the best. When he said I was being with Brandon, I was like, oh, great. That's one of the top NHL photographers that I know and I admire. So it's awesome to jump on a call and talk with him. I know that I've put off on talking with Mike for about a week now at Arizona, and I'm like, oh, crap, I need to get on and talk with him. Because I think that bouncing ideas with other creatives is exactly what needs to be happening right now, especially when we're all cooped up in our house. So what else we got here? So does the university provide the gear for your students, interns? Do the students have invested their own personal gear outside the university? So I'm fortunate that our university has made with our staff that our students don't use their personal gear. Some use them because they're comfortable with it, but for the most part, I try to push our gear because we're using some of the best stuff. We're with Canon, and we've got a lot of gear. We're fortunate that we made a really good connection with Canon and really invested well. And same with studio stuff. Universities are fortunate that the budgets are there, but they just have to be worked in a right way to get what you need. And so we've made it work really well. So all of our students use university gear. And then as far as like laptops go, we try to get them, but sometimes it's tough. So those are probably the only things that we really ask. What's the hardest part about doing photography full time? Burnout, not trying to be creative, or trying to be over creative when you don't need to be creative, or trying to do something that the people don't want. That's always one of those relationships that I've tried to work with our SID. I had one SID, I remember, she was like, hey, I'm never going to post a panning photo, even if it was tack sharp. She's like, I just don't like them. And I was like, okay, well, that's not great. But at the same time, I was like, okay, if I'm spending a whole game panning for this, maybe I should do something different, try to do something different for her. And she loved more intimate or moments with the coaches and players. And so I was like, okay, I can work on that. So I found like little things that I could work on. And with, I think professional level is even probably tougher, and Brandon can talk about it, but you shoot so many games and you shoot so many of the same things. You kind of fall behind, and you're not creative anymore at certain times. Within college athletics, we joke that you've got 2 seasons. You've got your crossover, which is your football into basketball into football. You're going into postseason football. Some schools are going into the national championship and the playoffs. Others are going to the bowls, and others are wrapping up. But there's a crossover period where that happens, and then you have the tip off of basketball season. And usually you're in your non-conference, but it's still a wild time. And that crossover season is nuts. And so someone just asked, how do I manage that crossover season? It's one of the hardest times. You pray that your students are ready for that time, and you don't get burned out, because once crossover season ends, then you have championship season, which is all of like March. And you can be on the road. I know while I was at Indiana, one of my years, I was on the road for 29 of the like 30 days. I flew from Mexico City with soccer back to go to track and field or somewhere. And then I went from track and field to women's basketball in Oregon. And I was like, this is nuts. But trying not to get burned out in those 2 periods of time is really one of those things that I would try to work on. And then the other thing is that being a full-time photographer is not just taking photos. We manage archives. We've got tons of archives that are unmanaged for the last dozen. I've got Drobos that probably don't even work. So it's taking on all that. And thankfully this time came right when we probably needed to be working on archives. That was my summer project, but we were already getting back up on some of the stuff that we had currently shot this year. So having the time to really like work on archives and as a full-time photographer, that takes up a lot of my time. And then the other challenging thing as a full-time photographer at schools is working on that connection and that relationship so that you can get the access So going and having lunches with our coaching staff, going to grab beers after they win their first game. You got to build those relationships that when the time comes and they're like, hey, you can come in our locker room, we trust you. That's one of the biggest, that's one of my, even if I make really shitty photos from that thing, it means that they can trust me to go in there and have the confidence in that I'm not going to do something really stupid. I've had coaches say, get the hell out of here, choice words, but because they're just not confident and they're not ready for it. And then they turn around and the next day they're like, hey, sorry, I forgot that you were our staff photographer. You're like, okay, well, we're working on that. And so then you just be like, hey, we need to work on this relationship. Let's see. How did you shoot the underwater shots? I was fortunate that both Tennessee and Indiana had invested in Aquatech, or not Aquatech. Aquatech housings. Sorry. And we were able to really experiment. Tennessee was awesome because we really built the relationship with the swimming and diving. They hosted SEC while we were there. And then turn around and I went to Indiana, and Indiana had 2 USA national team coaches. And Indiana had Lily King, who's an Olympian all time, and she's amazing and awesome to work with. And there's so many other athletes that were part of that swimming and diving program that were really next level. And so we were able, the other funny thing is that the sport admin for swimming and diving was also the admin for our creative center. So getting underwater gear was pretty easy when you convinced him of how badass the photos would look. So we were able to use Aquatech. We had 2 housings at Indiana, one for 1DX, and we would put that down on a remote plate that one of our facility guys built for us. We'd snorkel. I wasn't dive certified. Donald was at Tennessee, so I was fortunate for that. And so he was able to really take it to another level. But at Indiana, we were just trial and error. We had enough meets that we were able to do it. And then we also hosted Big Tens, which was an awesome competition to host. And it was about 4 days of swimming diving, and we were able to make some good stuff. Last question here. Let's see, before I turn it over, since running a little bit. Or it's dressing rooms. Oh, so you forget about women that work in men's swimming dressing room option or launching with launching coaches. Let's see. What other questions we got here?
I'll throw one out because I can't. Like I know for a lot of people in here, we shoot newspapers, wires for teams, for whatnot. What's like because a lot of the stuff you're doing is for marketing side and for whatnot. Can you talk about how shooting is a little different than pure action, and what during games you're looking for that to kind of mix it up and whatnot? So you have to cover, you have to cover your archival stock stuff. You also have to cover, stuff for social, but then also stuff that is usable for marketing and, getting like your Indiana overhead picture that we just saw, like getting the logos in there here, like the full team name and some of that context stuff that, naturally if you're covering it for a newspaper or a school newspaper or even, a wire, you don't really think about. So it's more of like you're trying to tell a different story than some others. So
definitely. Let me jump back here really quick. Marissa, so I definitely forgot about women working in men's sports, and I apologize for that. And I will say that I've been fortunate that I've had strong females working with me, and I actually the person that took over for me was my former intern at Indiana, and she Missy Manier, and now she's traveling with men's basketball and has that access because she's built that trust with those coaches. She always asks the trainer, hey, is it good to go in? And they say yes, and then she gets to go in. They shoot those moments. I know that I think she was in the locker room with Bob Knight before he went on the court. And she was, and sometimes those coaching staffs are tough to build those relationships with. So it's one of those things where it takes a lot of work. And the way that I was able to get her comfortable with football was throwing her in the mix where coach would be able to see her working. And so one of those moments was with during their team photo. I stepped back and didn't take the team photo, and I let her take one of them. And coach was like, "Who's that?" And I was like, "Oh, that's Missy. She's our assistant." And then he was like, "Oh, cool." And then he realized who she was and was able to pick up on her in the other events. I try to put our students in the best position to succeed. I've got 3 student workers here that are all females, and they actually work out better because they can go into the locker rooms in places that I can't go for women's sports. So one of our students is able to build the trust to go into women's basketball locker rooms and stuff like that. So I think it's just how, if you have the support and you're able to push it, it's there. To go back off of what Michael just asked, so I think that it's interesting. It's interesting because when we come up with ideas, sometimes I don't always run them through marketing, which is not always the greatest idea. But because they're always wanting clear bag photos or something like that. But sometimes we come up with ideas that marketing loves. And so it's not just shooting the action and everything else. We put up a lot of remotes that maybe they're going to succeed one game and maybe they're not going to succeed the next 3 games. That Indiana shot, we were lucky. I joke about it all the time. It was the right time because you can see in the bottom corner of the shot the runner's trailing from the other team, and he was just right offside of it. So we were playing with the strobes. We had our remote sync to the strobe, and I was sitting down there going like this, holding it down, praying that we got the shot. And I think the student that was across the thing saw the smile, and there's a great reaction of me just holding the pocket wizard praying. So moments like that, we planned for it, and I was hoping that he would make a great breakaway, or I was hoping that there was a crazy shadows in there like Beck from SI does. But it worked out really well because it was one of those moments. And then I think 90% of all the other shots in this range were terrible from this remote were terrible. But we planned for those things, and then the action, it happens, but it's the behind the scenes moments. So like that shot, setting up the remote for that, we did it. That was my first game at Indiana, and I was like, you know what, it'd be really cool. And they said that there's these fires and flames, and it's a new entrance, and we were going over the team meetings and everything. And I was like, oh, what do we do? What do we do? And they're like, we really want something that shows this crazy fire. And then took the photo, and I realized that the top left corner there's empty stands, and I was like, they're never going to use it, so we needed to crop it tighter. And so now the flames weren't in as much. And sometimes you just have to work with those things. I think for us, going behind the scenes, we have, as a university photographer, we have access that a lot of other photographers don't necessarily have or granted. And it stinks because there's some really talented photographers out there that probably have those access, and they're really good guys. But at the same time, it comes back to that relationship. I know Zach down at Mizzou travels with basketball left and right to build that relationship all season long. And so it's being in the hallways at the right time and planning ahead. I think that we as college athletic photographers, I know Chris Parent shows up like 10 hours before the game, and I was like, what are you doing there? And he's like, oh, I just got to get ready. And so we waste a lot of time waiting, but sometimes that's the best time. And sometimes things fall in your lap. Like I went to this band practice because our AD was there, and I walked up to the top of the stairs, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And I didn't think anything of it. And then it was a great shot. And I was like, oh, cool. And this is for the AD is somewhere else all the way on the other end of the field talking to the commander of the military. And I'm like, oh, crap, I missed that shot. And I apologized to him. He's like, oh, I didn't care. I don't really care. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that worked out really well. But I probably could have gotten shoot out for that. So it's just the risk that you have to take. I don't know if that really answered your shot. I was really
Oh, great. Yeah, of course.
But yeah, as a college athletic photographer, it's a unique time. I know that it's a scary time for some of us. I know that I'm fortunate that I'm at a huge university, and that I'm still having some requests here and there. So I don't know how I would be doing in a freelance market right now. So I feel for you guys a lot, and I give you guys a lot of props during this downtime. I probably should pass it off to Brandon. I rambled enough.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing. And if you got any questions about anything, Craig is one of the best with interns and always looking for new students. And I'm sure he would love to answer any further questions if you want to email, or I'll put his information in the chat here below. And next we will invite, let's see, stop sharing for a second. Let's find Brandon. What's up, dude?
How's it going, guys? Thanks, Craig. Thought that was awesome seeing all the work you've done. I mean, I never really did too much college stuff, so I'm sure college is just a completely different beast with all the different sports you have to cover at once.
It's unique.
Yeah. Oh, I bet. So I'm gonna break this up into 3 different parts.
Where to start?
Now, sorry, 1 second. You can start on either sports singles or the Waterman series.
Got it.
I'm gonna break this up into 3 parts, and after each part, if anyone wants to ask questions, feel free to. The first part is gonna be kind of just how I started off. My first step into photography, I was an assistant for a photographer in San Diego. His name's Donald Morale. I literally had to email him about 15 times before I got a response. And by the time I did, he told me I could work for him as assistant. It wasn't gonna pay much, but he would, teach me everything he knew. So I packed up all my stuff, moved to San Diego, and worked under him for about 2.5 years. During those times, it was straight up just assistant work. Like, I was setting up lights, making sure cameras and lenses were set and ready to switch out for him. Just your normal assistant work. But that stuff's great when you're starting out off, because you just need to be a sponge and just absorb everything you see and ask questions. Like I said, I wasn't making much money, so I was doing all this assistant work during the day, and then I was bartending at night so I could save up money for photo equipment. Over time, I ended up becoming a second shooter and got a chance to shoot a lot of events side by side with him. But besides that, when I was assisting, I spent a lot of my time trying to find things on my own. So I was shooting a lot of photos of people out in the water surfing, trying to do friends doing portraits. I did the Waterman series, which you can bring up in a bit. And that was literally, I just posted up on the beach. I made a small black background, and when surfers and paddleboarders were coming out of the water, I just asked if I could take a picture of them, just a quick headshot. And I created this nice little series of all these different people that a lot of them were older, looked weathered, sunscreen damage, water dripping off them, exhausted after a surf. And so it's been one of my favorite portrait series I've had for a while. But when you're starting off, you definitely have to find a lot of things on your own. You have to take that time to find those projects and stories that drive you, and those are the ones that I think usually stick with you and also speak the loudest, because that's what you're passionate about and that's what you went out to do. While I was assisting Don, we got a photo shoot with the UFC. So that was the first time that I got introduced to them. Not too long after, a job opened up with the UFC. I applied, went through about 4 rounds of interviews, made it to the final interview, and I didn't get the job. I was pretty devastated. But it was what it was, and I just kept on pushing. I kept working with Don for another year, kept expanding my portfolio. And then a year after I got rejected from that job, I got a call from the UFC randomly, and they asked if I was still interested. So kind of going back to what Craig said, don't worry about not being there yet. I'd say apply to anything and everything you can, and opportunities will come up. I've been rejected by so many different professional teams and organizations, and it is what it is. You try not to take it personally, but things happen and it all kind of works out. So if anyone has any questions before I hop into the UFC side, feel free to ask.
I'll show this Waterman series real quick.
Yeah, so this is the Waterman series where I said I literally just posted up on the beach and I just made a black background. I also actually had a piece of silk too, so it wasn't just harsh sunlight on. So there's kind of like made my own soft box through the sun. But like I've always loved this series just because I grew up surfing and always by an ocean, and just seeing all the characters that you see out there when you're surfing, and all these faces, they kind of tell their own story just looking from them. All right, I got a question from Liz. Did you study photography or are you self-taught? No, I went to school to be, I majored in environmental sciences and I was planning on going to law school to be an environmental lawyer. And I realized that's not what I wanted to do. And so right after I graduated, I told my parents I was moving to San Diego to become a photographer. They weren't too happy. So I wouldn't say fully self-taught. I did photography in high school for like yearbooks, so I kind of had the basics, but a lot of it I learned through Dawn as I was going through. Question from Marissa: the photo of the child, not the skateboard, is that how they teach surfing in waves? No, I think it's just a fun thing that people do. They just put these tarps on the ground, and a kid will be skateboarding, and one other kid will pull the tarp over, so the it kind of gives you the feeling like you're getting barreled. It was more so a fun thing. So
switch over to UFC.
Yeah.
Where do we start? Main folder.
I would say probably start in the Ronda one.
Ronda, okay.
Yeah. Cool. So when I started at the UFC, it definitely wasn't. I didn't get to hit the ground running. I wasn't shooting all the big fights. A majority of my job starting off was editing, captioning, organizing, cutting out, silhouetting photos for broadcasts and posters. And my one main project I got to shoot was the reality TV show called The Ultimate Fighter. Obviously, I wanted to shoot. That's why I, took the job and did what I did. But having the opportunity to edit and go through all of these old photos was a great experience because it helped show me how these other photographers were capturing the events and the fights, and it helped make me think of ways that I could try and do it differently and do it myself in my own way. So I took advantage of when I was shooting that reality show because that was pretty much solely my project, and I had all the creative freedom in the world to do whatever I wanted in terms of capturing the images, besides obviously shooting the fights. So that's where I mostly focused on all the locker room scenes and the lead up to the fights, and then we'd shoot the fight at the end of the day. It's fun to look back on because a lot of those fighters that came from that show went on to be like champions and big names in the house. It ended up being like one of the ways I had to like kind of prove my skill set and get more chances to shoot the bigger fights cage side and above the cage. But I knew I wasn't going to get all of those big fights starting off. We already had two photographers that had been there for years and they had priority. So, one of the things I did is I started to get to know these fighters and I connect with them. And I'd ask them if I could just shoot their training camp or shoot their workouts and their weight cuts. Those end up being some of my favorite photos. You can go over to the Connor one.
Okay.
I met, let's see. Yeah, I met a lot of great fighters throughout it all, and a lot of them were great for letting them come in and shoot their training camp. And the ones that you just saw before of Ronda, I proposed that to my boss of just shooting some images of her and her opponent Holly Holm before their fight in Australia. The boss liked it and approved it, sent me out, went for a date each for both of them. The images came out well, and they provided a nice lead up to the fight. And then my boss was really happy with it, that they ended up telling me that they were sending me on the trip to Australia to cover the fight as well. So I was stoked because that was my first like big international trip, and I got to spend the time following Ronda around. And one of the other big photo stories is this one right here with Conor McGregor. I was pretty fortunate. I met him pretty early on in his career, and I just happened to ask him if I could cover one of his training camps. And so I'd covered about 4 or 5 of his training camps before this Mayweather fight happened. So I knew that when he was going to come to Vegas and train, that I'd have the opportunity to shoot with him. Since it was going to be a massive fight, I wasn't going to be able to shoot the fight because there's only so many spots on a boxing ring or an octagon. There's limited space. I didn't have seniorities, but I just decided to fully immerse myself in his camp, and I knew I was going to be there for 6 weeks. I was going to get a lot of nice photos from it. And this wasn't an assigned project from the UFC either. This was just kind of like an extra project I put on myself. And I had to make sure all my other work obligations were done first. So those 6 weeks were some of the longest because I'd be in the office working from about 8 to 6 p.m., editing, organizing, shooting the reality show, any other things we had going on. And then I'd go home for a couple hours, eat dinner, and then head back to the gym at 10 or 11 to take these photos of Connor. Again, those were some of the longest days, but they're also some of the most satisfying. When fight night came, I was assigned to editing, so again, wasn't going to get to shoot the fight. But because I had a good relationship with Connor, I was able to go in and get some photos of him prior to the fight, of him warming up, training, getting his gloves on, and it was a nice addition to the story. And it really all paid off because somehow this Connor story received first place in Pictures of the Year for Sports Picture Story. And to be completely honest, I didn't think I had any chance since I didn't actually shoot the fight. And I thought that wasn't going to tie the whole thing together, but it ended up being a nice surprise. And I just truly believe, if you find a story or a project you want to work on, those photos are just going to stand out so much more. It's not like you're just assigned project. Don't get me wrong. I feel like everyone wants to get that peak action shot. Those are the ones remembered. But again, you're sitting next to probably 12 people that all have the similar photo. I think it's more unique to go and get to know the athlete, humanize them, and just capture their moments. You can go over to the UFC folder now. So kind of just to wrap up my time at UFC, after being there for a bit, I kind of proven my worth and proven that I was able to capture everything from locker room, behind the scenes moments, cage side, above the cage, portraits, everything. So by the end, I was doing full fight weeks by myself, and those get to be a lot. I'll give an example of what in a fight week. Say it's in New York, we'd fly out Sunday to New York, land Monday. We'd have a full day of setup for portraits, usually about 6 light setup. Tuesday and Wednesday, we'd shoot portraits of between 18 and 24 fighters with about 60 poses each. And between each fighter, you have to try and find some time, download the card, edit them, apply your metadata, send to Getty, send to the designers so they can cut them out, broadcast in time. And then Thursday, media day, Friday, weigh-ins, and then Saturday leads all up to Saturday, which is your fight day. Fights start at 3:00. You get to arena probably around 10 or 11, so you can set up all your tethering tools, test all your cameras, and then you're done at the night by maybe 11 or 12 at night. Go back to your hotel, pack your bag, head either home on Sunday or to the next city. So, it got to be a lot, and I loved it. I loved every moment of it. It was great. But when I got to that point, this was always a point that I wanted to get. I wanted to be, shooting the fights, doing all the portraits, all that fun stuff. And the thing that I kind of lost from that was I didn't get to do as much of the fun behind the scenes, creative stuff that I'd liked. Now I had to focus more on the obligations we had to Getty, to our social team, to our designers. And, it's part of the job. You got to get through that stuff first, and then all the creative stuff after can be extra gravy. So I was there for about 4.5 years. Got tired of living in Vegas, was ready for a change. And saw a Sharks job pop up on LinkedIn. Didn't know much about hockey. Only saw one game in my life, which happened to be the Vegas Golden Knights versus the Sharks. And thought why not? I'd apply. Got a call about a month later, went through the interview process, and the last thing they had me do was fly out and like shoot a game to make sure I could actually do it. It was a tough experience. All of the goals and action happened on the other end of the ice, so I didn't get any of the main action stuff. But the Sharks were really happy with what they saw because it had a range of photos from fan, atmosphere, some action, and it ended up working out. And they extended me an offer. I finished my last UFC fight in New York, flew home, packed up my apartment, and then moved to San Jose a week later to start shooting playoffs. So let's look at some questions.
Any UFC questions before we?
Someone asked, "Are you featured in the Netflix film that just launched?" I don't think so. If I am, I haven't seen any money. Of Ronda Rousey. No, I don't think so. At this time of year, are you missing NHL? Yeah, I think everyone's missing sports. It's a tough time. What equipment do you shoot hockey with? For the action photos, I have my Nikon D5 bodies. My go-to is usually a 7200, 14 to 24. I'll use it 80 to 400 from time to time just so I can get to the other end of the ice. With hockey, you're a little limited because you literally have like a small photo hole that's only so big. So you only have a small range of view. But, there's a lot you can do with it.
All right.
Anything else before I hop into my last section of Sharks hockey? All right.
Take it away.
Dive on in. So I've been with the Sharks. It'll be 2 years next week, actually. And it's been a pretty great experience so far. What I really loved about it starting off is that it was such a unique challenge. I hadn't shot hockey before. I didn't know what to expect. I pretty much had to learn the game. But what's so great about the internet these days is there's Instagram, there's everything. There's so many people to draw inspiration from and learn how to shoot things. I mean, I think I saw Candace on here. Yeah, Candace Ward's here, and she's an amazing hockey photographer. I would see her stuff and I would be like, how the hell did she get that photo? And she also has amazing portraits and you can tell it just connects with the players and just brings out all these emotions. So, I mean, when I was starting off, I was deep in Instagram and Twitter and the internet, seeing what other hockey photographers were doing, what I could do similarly, what I can do differently. And I just tried to kind of make it my own look and feel. Working for a team is definitely a bit different than working for a UFC. The UFC is kind of more like a league. So when you're working for a team, I mean, I feel like I definitely experienced the highs and lows a lot more than I did with the UFC. With the UFC, you definitely get connections with fighters and stuff, but it kind of felt like you're just going from event to event. I had the NHL also has a contract with Getty, so that was a big benefit for me in terms of already knowing the Getty system, how it worked. It was easy transition for the Sharks to bring me on just because I knew how to kind of work with that. Initially when I started, there was definitely a little hesitation about having me photograph the guys in the locker room just because it wasn't really something that the prior photographers did. So I kind of eased into it. I'd only go in for a few minutes and then hop back out. But something that was a really big help was a lot of the guys in the locker room are actually big UFC fans. And some of them saw my work and we would chat about it from time to time. And, once the players got to know me, they definitely felt more comfortable with me being in the locker room because they also knew I'd worked with these other big big name athletes, and that I'd be professional with everything I did. Actually, funny story. One of our players, Brent Burns, I was talking to him. He's a big Conor McGregor fan. And he told me that I met Conor in like 2015 at one of the facilities. And I was thinking back on it, and I was like, I think I was actually there. I went back, looked through the hard drives, and reached out to one of my old coworkers, and they found a picture I took of Brent Burns with Conor McGregor.
That's awesome.
So I always thought that was hilarious because like I didn't know who the hell Brent Burns was. I just saw this like toothless hockey guy taking a picture with Conor, and it's just weird how those things work out. Yeah, with the Sharks, it's been great. A lot of creative freedom, but also, I'm involved with a lot of things outside of the photography aspect with other departments within our company. Helps expand my skill set. In terms of managing, budgeting. It's been a great experience so far. One of the other things that has been great too is portraits. I love doing portraits. And it's taken me a long time to kind of perfect it, and I wouldn't even say I'm great at it yet. I still have a lot to learn and a lot of things to work on, but I truly think if you know how to lay a portrait, it's gonna take your photography to the next level, because there's always a need for portraits, whether it's sports, entertainment, news, media. Like it's something you should definitely learn. So let's see, I think a couple of questions popped up. Do you do remotes for hockey? Yeah, so I do a range of remotes. I don't do them every game. Some of the remotes I do mostly just overhead. Some of the overhead shots for like goals and goal celebrations are great. I love the overhead remotes because the ice is still so clean. I'm sure eventually that'll change, but like that photo right there, like there's no sponsors or anything on it yet, And with hockey, there's sponsors all over the dashboards, UFC that's on the canvas, football, like everywhere there's sponsors. So I love that overhead look. I do have a remote as well for inside the hockey net. It's inside like a plexiglass case, and thankfully it hasn't been hit and smashed yet, but I've seen a couple photographers that have had that happen. But the remotes are great. I mean, it gives me a lot of options to be in multiple places at once, and I try and take full advantage of it as I can. Question from Jeff. Do you ever shoot through the glass, and what suggestion do you have for it? Do you shoot hockey on strobe? I don't shoot hockey through the glass. Every now and then I'll have a remote that shoots through the glass that's like directly behind the goalie, but honestly, most of the glass, at least in our arena, is pretty beat up. So most of the images are going to be pretty hard to come out sharp. I don't use strobes. The photographers before me used to, but the arena just got new LED lights a little over a year ago, which provides a great light. I mean, it's not going to be as tack sharp as having a strobe, but what's up there, the strobes they have up there, Speedotrons that are like over a decade old, that take one, that, flash once, then you have to wait 3 seconds for it to recharge. So you're going to miss so much rather than just actually shooting a sequence. So I don't shoot strobes. I know some people still do. I think the quality that we're able to produce with the camera in this day of age is great. Obviously you see more of the grain and less sharpness if it's blown up for like a billboard or something, but we try and keep our media day portraits used for stuff like that.
All right, because I've gotten 3 texts about it. Will you talk about this portrait?
Yeah. So I get asked about this one all the time too. This was a photo I've wanted to do for a while. It was
online.
Excuse me? Yeah. It was one of the most fun, but also one of the most challenging shoots I ever had to do. The first time I had seen it was actually from my original mentor, Don. he did a plexiglass shoot with the Washington Nationals and Bryce Harper. And I'd seen it done a couple times for baseball, once for a track and field player. I hadn't seen anyone do it for hockey. I didn't see until after I took this. I found out one guy did before me. But I kind of wanted to capture it, make it feel like I was looking down from below the ice. But most of the photos I've seen of plexiglass were outside. Like, I hadn't seen a single one that was like inside the arena. So I wanted to actually get the full feel of like a player being on the ice inside the arena. And yeah, I mean, it took a lot. I had to convince my my boss that it was going to be well worth the cost, because plexiglass is not cheap. I think that piece of plexi cost a little over $4,000. So that ate into my budget, and I needed to kind of sacrifice some other things to make it work. But I have a great team at the Sharks. My building ops people helped build me a set to put the plexiglass on to make it as safe as possible. Because obviously the last thing we need is one of our athletes falling through this glass and ending their season. I used a 3-light setup on this. So I had one key light right in front of the player, which is the main key light, and then 2 massive ones further down the ice, just shooting in, just kind of like separate him from the background, so you can kind of see kind of where the butt of the player is as like a little bit of light. So that way it would just separate him and make him pop more. Again, it was one of the more challenging ones because, as you can see, there's nicks and scratches all over it. Plexiglass is super fragile. Like, you barely touch it and it'll just have a scratch and there's no way to buff it out. So we had 3 players do it, and by the time the 3rd player came on, it was pretty beat to shit. But pretty happy with how they turned out. I've got a series of them, but I think this one will always be my favorite one. This one's actually a fun one too. If you guys want to hear a story, if you go back to the Post Malone one, besides being the Sharks photographer, I cover all the concerts at SAP Center. And Post Malone came. I was shooting the concert, and I was always kind of amazed by all the face tattoos this dude has. He's just a unique looking guy. After I was done shooting the first 3 songs, I was walking towards the back and I overheard someone talking to his manager. So I decided to wait. Once the guy was done talking to the manager, I went to the manager, asked, "Hey, I'm the photographer for the arena, just shot the concert. I'd love to get a headshot of Post Malone if that's possible." And he thought about it, and he was like, "Yeah, let me talk to him after the concert. Just be ready, once he's done." And so I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't want to make a huge setup, so I just ran to my desk, grabbed a ring light, set it up over by his like little locker room. He finished the show, and I waited about like an hour and a half, 2 hours after the show, because he was just relaxing and drinking beer. And he came out, super nice, let me take 5 pictures of him, and then went on his way. And this just literally was a lucky thing that I just, decided to ask and see why not. What's the worst they could say? No. And, they said yes, and I got an awesome portrait of him that I really like. Unfortunately, it's outdated because he has about 5 more tattoos on his face now, though.
Any other
questions?
Throw them out.
What?
I said throw out any questions if anybody has any.
Yeah, there's a couple on here. What's your best piece of advice for shooting hockey? Best piece of advice? Try and figure out which photo holes have the best view and range. Obviously, you're going to be limited depending if you're shooting for a wire or for a paper or what. Hockey's tough. Hockey's fast. I would, just keep your eyes on the puck, focus on the player, and then, when there's stop and action, just try and find those moments quiet moments between players, fans. There's always a lot going on. Don't just focus on the action. There's so much going on around you that there's a lot of nice photos to take. Being the team photographer, does the organization set expectations for you to push creative boundaries like you did with the plexiglass shoot? Or is it kind of your own motivations pushing you to try new things? I would say it's a little bit more on me. Again, the Sharks are great. They give me pretty much like full creative freedom. I obviously work with like our creative team before our media day and see what the plan is, like what the theme or campaign is going to be for the season. And we make sure we get all the standard poses and everything that we need first. Again, go through the checklist, get everything done that is expected of you. And then anything else that you want to do is just extra gravy. Like that plexiglass shoot was just something extra I wanted to do. It wasn't anything that was planned or necessarily needed. So, if you're also going to have like a idea of like a specialty shoot or something you want to do, like make sure you like have a plan and set it up and have it proposed. Don't just, spitball it with someone and hope that's going to happen. Like create a plan, have it all written out, laid out, so you can just show like, this is why we should do this. I think this will be great for us and XYZ reasoning. Another question, more or less, are there expectations of you and the budget for you to be creative on top of marketing needs? No, I mean, we usually have a set budget for the year for media day. So I propose what I potentially need, lay it out in terms of like, I need to rent this land equipment. I need to have a digital tech. It'll cost them this much for a day, so on and so forth. Present that, and then they'll go through and then come back and either approve the cost or they'll say, we need to take like $1,000 off. What can you do? So you just kind of have to work with your team. For the most part, they're pretty good about getting you what you need. And they understand, especially when they see the results. They know what you can produce. So what is your ideal lighting setup for team portraiture? I mean, it fully depends what you're trying to achieve. With UFC, we had a 6-light setup, 2 lights to blow out the background, 2 rim lights behind the fighter, 1 overhead key light, and then 1 light on the floor as fill. And that was like the just standard lighting for all of broadcast and main posters, things like that. But after we shoot those, we try and get creative and switch to a 1 or 2 light setup, rearrange where the lights were so you get different shadows. I mean, it fully depends like what your team needs of you. So again, it goes back to working with your creative team and working together and figuring out first what's needed to promote everything, and then after that, get creative and do some extra fun stuff. And sometimes your creative team will look at the creative stuff and be like, wow, this is a lot better than what we originally planned. Let's go with this. So is there anything that you would have done differently after the fact with the plexiglass shoot? I think the biggest thing is I just wish I had more time with the players, and just I wish I had a bigger piece of plexiglass. I was pretty limited with the size I had. I mean, I think I had like an 8x5 piece of plexiglass, and by the time I set it safely on the scaffolding and structure and everything, my window is more so like 6x4 feet, if not less. So I only had like a very limited range of what I could do and shoot, and I had to kind of play around with lenses. Again, plexiglass is expensive, so you just got to make do with what you can. And same thing with players, This is something I'm sure some of you know or will learn, is that you'll set things up and have this elaborate plan of all these things you want to shoot, but then when the athlete comes in, you are told you only have 2 to 5 minutes with them, so you got to make the most of that, and you have to adapt, be prepared. How many employees do you have dedicated to content creation for the Sharks? Are they part-time, full-time, freelance? Right now, it's just me full-time. I have another part-time photographer who helps me edit my photos on game day, and he also photographs our minor league team, the Barracuda. We don't do any freelance. I think it's a challenge now because there's that new law with freelancers in California. So right now it's just the 2 of us. Would love to have more people, but this is the Sharks' first time having a full-time staff photographer. The last 2 guys I had were technically freelance. So, there's some growing pains. You can tell them how much you need another person on staff, but they see what you're getting done. They're happy with it. And, they're like, why do we need another person? So again, know how to write up a plan and show all the reasons why you need things.
I got a question.
Oh yeah, go for it.
How before you came on, clearly had social media and stuff. How has the team adapted to what you're doing behind the scenes and whatnot, because they didn't previously have that? And I would say I don't know if a lot of teams had the behind the scenes stuff before you started doing some of this. And how have they adapted or given you ideas or used what you've done on social media? Because I think that you have a voice to be able to share that, and it's kind of up to them how they use it and whatnot. So
yeah, I mean, I have an awesome social team too. I mean, they think of things, they find great ways to make use of my photos in ways I wouldn't even think of. Like one example, I think I took a picture of like one of our guys that was like deep in thought. He was just like sitting like this, and they posted it on there. And like I didn't think it was like a great picture by any means, but they posted the picture and the caption was like, thinking of Carol Baskin killed her husband after watching Tiger King. Like they think of ways to make it like relevant and get people engaged with it. And like that's an example I thought was really fun. But prior to me being there, the 2 photographers literally pretty much just shot game action and not much else. They also didn't really have a great system in place. They weren't really getting images out until the second period. And, by then, like so much can happen in the first period. It could be like 2 or 3 goals or a hat trick or something, and you're already on to the next thing. So I pretty much came in and used the system that I was using at UFC, where my cameras are tethered into my laptop. I'm shooting the game. I'm tagging the best photos that go directly to my editor. He edits them, uploads them to Libris, and our social team can download them from Libris. So he'll edit, send it to Libris, and then send the best ones to Getty as well. So that way our social team that used to be getting images in the second period, we're now getting images about 30, 40 seconds after like a goal or whatever was sent. So they loved it. It definitely was a change for them, because now they're just getting flooded with images so fast that they didn't really know how to react. But it's been great for them, pushes things out faster. And then using Libris has been great too. I mean, we keyword everything, and all our social and creative are able to go on there and, search Brent Burns goal or celebration, action, locker room. Like they just type in a specific keyword and everything will pop up for them. So prior to that, everything was just kind of in folders with no metadata, and social teams would literally have to open a folder and look through 1,000 images and try and find the best one, which, tough to expect someone that's not maybe fully immersed in photography to find the best photo. So, I mean, that's something too, is that you're in this day of age, you're just always gonna have to continue to learn and adapt. Like there's still so much for me to learn, and I can't even say that I'm up to date with everything, but you need to try and stay on top of it as much as you can, because there's always someone out there that's doing it just as well, if not better, in a more effective way. So. Another question here. How do you begin to build relationships with athletes, especially bigger sports? I'd say kind of naturally or organically. Like, for the most part, when you're shooting these athletes, like you don't go up to them and just start, strike up a conversation. Like, most of these conversations that have started for me were because they recognize me because I've been in the locker room or shooting them for like a while, and then they either ask like, "Oh, can you see that photo?" Or they somehow kind of start the conversation themselves, and it's just making it feel comfortable more than anything, and just, I guess, kind of what your personality is too. And I do have to say, if anyone wants to email me questions or anything, they're more than welcome to as well. I've been very fortunate to have some great mentors and photo friends that have helped me throughout my my photography journey. Like, I still ask people questions all the time, like, "Oh, how'd you get this?" or "How'd you like this?" Feel free to ask me. Like, again, big thank you to my original mentor, Don, and then my old boss at the UFC, Josh Hedges. They gave me a lot of opportunities to get me to where I am now. And if it wasn't for them, I mean, I don't know what I'd be doing. So don't be afraid to reach out to photographers. There's a lot that aren't going to respond or not going to give you great responses, but the ones that do respond and give you a great response, like, those are the ones that'll help you. They'll help grow your career.
Sweet. Any other final questions? Well, we appreciate it. Thanks so much to Brandon and Craig for sharing today. That was awesome. And I will sing praises for them forever, but they are some of the best guys, and bounced ideas off of them before, and always willing to answer questions and hang out. So thanks to both of them. And
thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Other than that, I don't have much more. If anybody has any general questions to the group, if there's anything anybody would like to see, I know some people have mentioned maybe like a photo shelter, like a lesson or like a demo in the background, maybe a photo mechanic one. If you all have any ideas, shoot a message, or you can drop a chat here to me, and we can try to come up with something. And if anybody wants to volunteer to present or share some workflow stuff, we'd love to have that. And, other than that, we'll probably do next week at like maybe Monday or Tuesday. I got to look and see who I can talk to have come speak. And other than that, hope everybody has a great weekend, and shoot me a message if you want to have your portfolio looked at, or if you would like to look at portfolios. I've gotten a couple of messages already today. Would love to connect people with. And if you'd like to join the Slack channel, it's the first chat in here, or shoot me a message. I can text it individually. So appreciate everybody hopping on, and hope everybody has a great afternoon.
Yeah, thanks.
Appreciate it, Mike.
We'll also try to post it on YouTube if people that missed it or could benefit from it. Would love to share it, and I'll try to find a way to do that. So
Awesome.
All right, thanks guys. See y'all later.
Cool.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks.